Spread the word of Islam, oh fortunate one. Paradise must be won. Paradise must be won. Each day and each night, through darkness and through light, cry it out to the world. Spread the word. Spread the word of Islam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the program. I'm your host Musa Cerantonio, and I'm here with Sir Iqbal Sacraine from the UK. We're going to be looking at the topic of assimilation and integration. A brief background about our guest, Iqbal Sacraine, is that he is by profession an accountant, but he's also been a community and social worker in the UK for the past 30 years. Brother Iqbal has also been the chair of Muslim Aid, which is an international relief organization which operates in over 70 countries. The brother also is a senior advisor to the Muslim Council of Britain, of which he was a founding Secretary General. Now, my brother Iqbal, just to start off with, looking at assimilation and integration, how can we define them and what is the difference between the two?
Jazakumullah khairan, Brother Musa, for inviting me to this program. The subject of integration and assimilation is quite important because there's a confusion when we talk about integration and assimilation. What really do mean? Because to us, integration, there is no problem. Yes to integration, but no to assimilation. Integration, when we decided to live in a society which is where we were not born, and particularly those who had migrated into the West, into the UK, into other parts of Western European countries, there was a clear understanding that we are moving into a country which has got different traditions and culture, and sometimes even different laws. And one accepts that one has to abide by the law of the country. So that is an important aspect of your integration, that you accept the country you're moving into it, and you respect the laws of the country. Then the issue of the certain traditions of the country. For example, education. It's compulsory to go into education at a young age. It's important. And therefore, you send your children to a school. That's important. That's an important part of the integration. You are accepting the needs of the society, how they have to be met. Then, of course, that comes into that you are a taxpayer. You pay taxes when you earn employment. That's part of the way the society functions, and in other countries as well. So yes, absolutely no problem, that's fine. Now the issue with assimilation comes in is that you lose your identity, your basic way of living. For example, in the West, it's normal to go into the pubs, socialize, and drink alcohol. Now, your religion here comes in, guides you that it is not acceptable for you to drink alcohol. And therefore you say, no, you will not do that. It's practiced there, which has been practiced by many in the West, as far as the women are concerned, to wear miniskirts. And they dress in a way that they feel it's very normal for them. But for Muslims, we are asked to be dressed in a very humble, in a reasonable manner, where your clothing should protect your body, and you should, there are certain guidelines given to us, and therefore we would not adopt that method. That is, that this form of dressing is something acceptable to us. Even in schools, for example, where it has been regarded as compulsory to wear skirts, and we have argued our case that we would prefer our girls to wear trousers, and now the schools are accepting it. They don't force our girls to wear miniskirts, because that would be assimilating to that particular culture. So these are areas where your faith guides you, what is acceptable to do and what not to do. Abiding by the law of a country, different country, your deen accepts you, that when you are living in a different country, you have to accept the laws of the country. In the majority of the cases where you should not infringe with your deen. And by and large, in such countries, we are able to practice our faith in a way we should do. So there is no problems there. So this is a real issue that has come up. Now, our children who are born in that country. They have not migrated. Of course, they are now, for example, in Britain, they are born in the UK, they are British by birth, but they happen to have a Muslim identity. And therefore, that should be able to guide them the way through in their lives. So I think there are areas where a certain amount of mischief is being created by certain lobbyist groups, certain right-wing media, where they somehow say the answer to all this is that whoever comes in to live into our country, they should adopt every aspect of that life, social, cultural, political life, absolutely no problem. You know, in the political system that's there, in terms of democratic system that is in existence, we have got absolutely no problems with it. And we should, and it is healthy and proper. And our scholars have made it very clear that it does not contravene the Islamic teachings on that, where you have a shura that comes in and elects its own leader through whatever means. So we are talking about practices which are perhaps brought more on the cultural side, which we have got reservations, and we should come out of it and follow the main practices.
So definitely when there are certain things which are right, such as forced marriages, which are, I could say, very anti-Islamic, there's no problem with assimilating, because really this is something a Muslim really should be adapting to anyway. When, however, there are pushes, for example, the issue of hijab, the issue of covering the face, the keeping a beard, praying, for example, in the workplace, when these things come up and there are pushes for Muslims to assimilate, to leave these things behind, what is our argument as Muslims? How do we defend these rights against these pushes for assimilation?
This is quite an important point, Brother Musa, because there are cases, for example, the hijab issue is a big issue that has come up in the West now. There are moves towards banning hijab. As we know, in France, a clear statement in schools has been prohibited. And UK, alhamdulillah, our schools where we are able to, the girls are able to wear hijab. In workplaces, absolutely no problem. That is accepted. We have to make a case that such practices are not just beneficial to us as individuals, but they are beneficial for the society. Anything that comes on from what teaching of Islam can only bring benefit to oneself and the society. Now, we need to explain this in a very coherent, in a practical, in a dignified manner. That this has nothing to do with suppression of women or isolating women into a second class. If anything, it brings them dignity. And it is on their own wish that they wear it. We don't force, our women are not forced to it. It's an Islamic practice. But many of the women who wear hijab, and I think by and large, they do it because they feel proud about it. It's a tradition. They feel that it's in compliance with the Islamic teachings, and this is the way they would like to go along. The message needs to go out that such practices which we are trying to bring in, if we are able to do it in a willingly, in a happy way, where it's been accepted, then we will have a society where we will have much more harmony and peace. But where such practices which does not harm the society, a woman wearing hijab does not create a problem to the others. In a similar way that women who go into miniskirts and others, they have got their right the way, well, that's their wish. And we find it perhaps not acceptable in many ways, or not right, betterment for the society. But then who are we? Let them do it in what they would like to do. But likewise, when we wear in our traditions, then likewise we would expect them to respect it as well. So I think these are the areas that we have to convince them. Otherwise, you make it clear in a society, in a country, that look, no other, you will only have a monoculture. Similar situation like in France, where there are moves that they do not accept other traditions, other cultures, and say that you need to have a French identity and French culture. What has resulted? Riots. There have been real problems of violence coming up. And time again, you have ghettos where people say we will live in that way of life, whatever. That's not beneficial for the society. And these ghettos and other things are those that create much more problem for society at large, even for the police, even for the state. You will see in hospitals, people go along. We must be able to say that when we are in such places, we are able to practice and able to live in the manner which shouldn't be a problem to the other patients as well. And this will only come about where the state also plays an important role. And therefore, the laws of the country should be such that they should not prohibit activities or our actions which are not harmful to the society. So that's an important aspect as well.
Indeed. Looking at the example of hijab, which you did bring up, some have suggested that there might be a malevolent push behind some of the forces of assimilation. And the example is brought up with a hijab of, for example, the nun. Whereas the nun is able to continue covering herself as she wishes to do by her own choice. But for some reason, people are looking at the Muslim woman who's saying that she shouldn't be able to cover herself. And there's a bit of a contradiction there that people are seeing as apparent. We're going to go to a short break, inshallah. After we get back, we can perhaps look a little bit at the idea that there are malevolent ideas, there are people who have hidden agendas in the forces for assimilation. So inshallah, as I mentioned, we're going to have a short pause here, and we will see you, the viewers, inshallah, after a short break. Wassalamu alaikum.
Spread the word of Islam.
Marriage or divorce?
What's Islamic ruling?
Husband wants to give divorce.
Solution or problem?
Joint family system.
Heaven or hell?
Big fat Indians have become the norm.
You choose. Beauty, wealth, family status, virtue. Decide what you want. Decide your choice. Be sad or be happy. It's your choice. Join Dr. Zakir Naik in Better Half or Bitter Half today at 7 p.m. Saudi Arabia and 8 p.m. UAE on Peace TV.
Islam is easy to follow, but many of us complicate things due to lack of knowledge. To clarify confusions about Islam, join me on Umdatul Ahkam.
Get the remedies of Sunnah and Sahih Hadith to protect ourselves from all kinds of innovations in Umdatul Ahkam, next on Peace TV.
Spread the word of Islam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the program, where I'm here with Sir Iqbal Sacraine, looking at the topic of assimilation and integration. Now, I did mention just before the break the idea that there might be some malevolent ideas, people, or hidden agendas behind the pushes for assimilation. What are your thoughts on this?
I think there is some real concern that those who are really pushing towards this program of assimilation primarily mean that the focus of religion comes into a private concept. Because as we have referred time and again, that Islam is a way of life. It's something that cannot simply be practiced in homes and in our own privacy. It's there that enables us to practice our faith outside as well. Now, when we practice our faith outside, there are certain ethics, certain standards we maintain. Hijab is one, that they need to put it on, women when they go out to work. Muslim, when they've got the beards, it's fine, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. There's absolutely no problem with it. Performance of prayers. When time comes in, they want to carry out the prayers, which are important, and they can negotiate with the employer the timings, and all this is done. Now, if we were to bring in this concept of assimilation, basically what they're saying that all this thing should really cease. And this is where it becomes an impossible situation for Muslims. Because we cannot, yes, we are willing to live in a society, as I said early on, respect the laws of the country, follow the education system, go through the health system, absolutely fine, absolutely no problems into it. But there are certain aspects of our daily, our doings, which we want to do in a manner that is beneficial to me and the society. And this is particularly to do with our beliefs. The type of food we eat, we should have the freedom and to do what we want to do. There is no particular type of food that we have to force to eat just because we happen to be in a particular school or so. There are things that we can differentiate what is right for us and what is not right for us. So that, again, is an important aspect of it as well. The difficulty we sometimes face is through the media, because when they pick up some isolated examples of individuals whose behavior does not fall in line with the norms, then they somehow get concerned that, you know, this is an alien culture that is there, and therefore somehow link it with our faith. And we need to come out into the open and say, well, as long as it's not permissible Islam, that is culture which we also abhor and we are not part of it. So we should not give any oxygen to these elements in the media, or time and again looking for opportunities to demonize faith and argue the case for assimilation. That if you want to live in our society, in our country, and particularly those who happen to be of a different racial group, the emphasis on them is greater. And in the UK, recently we found that individuals coming in from East European countries who do happen to be of white background, white racial background, their traditions and cultures are different. And this has been pointed out as well. Okay, look, their practices somehow which are not in line with the main sort of mainstream. What happens then? And then it seems in exactly the same way, whether you are an Asian or black origin, your relationship with the state and with the community should be exactly the same, whether you are a person of a white background coming from East European countries as well. So I think there is much more understanding built in, and arguments in favor of allowing integration to go in a normal process. It is a period of time. Again, we must accept it will not be much of a problem for a generation that is born and bred in the countries in Britain or in other parts of the Western Europe, but much more of a problem for people who had migrated. And of course, these are now elderly generation. They come from the background. The other point came in is about speaking of the language. It's absolutely necessary. It's essential that if we are in England, we should speak English. Of course, how else would we be able to communicate with the society in which we live in? So we are fully in favor of that, but we need to provide provisions for that. Elderly who come in, how the state needs to provide facilities in colleges and schools for them to come in and learn that language so they become good citizens of our country. The issue of citizenship is absolutely essential when you talk about integration, assimilation. You can only be a good citizen if you are able to live in peace both outside and inner self as well. And inner self comes in where you're able to practice your faith in accordance to your teaching of Islam without any stumbling blocks. And I remember during the early days when I was in the UK, when I wanted to perform my Jummah prayers to go into the mosque, I was told, no, you had to go at a particular time, and the prayer time was slightly away from my lunch period time. It was a big problem. And then I explained to the person, look, my concentration, my work will not be there. I may be forced because I'm here to work, and as a student, I'm doing my professional studies. I have to stay in the office, but I will not be comfortable. And is it not right for me to put my full weight behind my work? And by you allowing me 15 minutes, and I'll be able to cover that 15 minutes after my work, or I will miss my lunch period for initial time. So it's not that the firm would lose a minute of their time they pay for me, but it's just that additional time that is needed so that I can accomplish my religious obligation. At the end, they understood. And now today, alhamdulillah, in workplace, in the UK, it's allowed. It's a good practice to allowing employees to perform their prayers and accommodate the timings as well. We are able to go for Hajj because it's an important aspect of our religion's practice. They allow the holidays, which we can go into it, not additional holidays, no, within the period, but during the Hajj time, so that we can go without interfering the aspect of the work. So I think there is much more learning now on the other side as well, that by allowing certain practices, certain traditions, which are in compliance with the faith, brings no harm. And when we feel confident about ourselves, we feel confident about the society, there's much more harmony and much more peace within the society. And I think people will respect us better as well. And people who have no identity of their own, if they have a case where they totally assimilate, they lose themselves, their names are anglicized, they have got no problems in going to the pubs, Muslims going into practices which are prohibited, which are haram to us, then we have seen that such people are not accepted in that other tradition as well. I mean, I can never be a white person. My skin remains brown as it is, and I should be proud about it, what Almighty Allah has given to me. So by assimilating into a different culture, a different tradition, foregoing myself, it may just be a superficial and an artificial way of looking at it, because the other side would not accept, because there are certain differences, and we have to accept that Almighty Allah has created us in different cultures, different traditions, so that we understand the communities better. And the Quranic verse is very clear on that. And we must respect that. That, you know, they are there, Allah, otherwise Almighty Allah has created. Allah could have created everybody under one color, one height, one sort of features, but no, that's the diversity, that's the beauty of Allah's creation. And we must be proud about it, and each one of us must be freely able to practice that as well.
Indeed. Now, as you did say, we do have differences, we do have different backgrounds, we do have different cultures, and part of multiculturalism, the benefit that we see is when they do come together, they support each other, they add to each other. For example, cuisine is one common example. I mean, what would the UK be without Indian cuisine? It's really become like a staple meal for the average British person. Now, there are all of these beneficial points, and these are some of the things which would help the common people realize that there's no need for assimilation because of all these good points coming. The fears, though, come when you do have, as we mentioned, like the marginalized people, the people who do bring these things which are either cultural and not part of Islam, or perhaps an interpretation of Islam which is not correct. How can we as the Muslim community reassure not just the British or the Australian, but all of the communities we live in? How can we help to combat this and reassure them that really it shouldn't be a problem?
I think it's vital that such practices which are being allowed, for example in Britain, when we see multiculturalism flourishing and it's real beneficial, we see real benefits, those arguing against it somehow believe that, you know, multiculturalism has given rights to the Muslim community or people of faith. Now, what rights? We have not got any extraordinary rights or any special rights. We have got the same rights as people of other faiths have been given as well. And it's a practice, and we have been living in harmony. As you mentioned, not just about the cuisine, bringing the other alternative systems, financial systems, the whole concept of Islamic finance has been developed. Our Prime Minister recently said that he wants Britain to be a gateway to Islamic finance, because they could see real values, real benefit from it. Not just inward investment that comes into billions, but in terms of how we are able to structure the financial products, the businesses, and the ethical aspect of it. Everybody benefits from it as well. So countries like France and others who do oppose this methodology, the system that is in place, have to learn from it. And they've seen, and they look at their side, what's happening in those countries, how satisfied and content the people in those countries are compared to the other countries as well. And I think we have a responsibility to ensure that this cultural aspect, which sometimes confuses our deen, and sometimes this culture, because there are hundreds of culture from people coming from hundreds of countries coming in, and there are people of Muslim background with different cultures. So it's not easy for us to then say, well, this is nothing to do with Islam. But provided we are clear in terms of the responsibility we have to the society, say, this is to do with Islam, this is to do with the culture. They may not lack that culture, but there's nothing wrong with our deen of Islam, which is a religion, which is, alhamdulillah, beneficial, not just to oneself, but to the society at large, and we can all benefit from it. So there are, of course, obligations on us and responsibilities. You know, when we say we live in a society, multicultural society, of course, we have a tremendous obligation to the society in which we live in. There are responsibilities as well, you see, that we feel both on us and on the others as well. So there are duties likewise, which we have to discharge, you know, to ensure that, no one is being treated unfairly and unjustly, but that we all can participate in a very positive way.
Indeed. It's been very beneficial to hear you bring up all of these points and even lessons that we can take from the example of the Muslims in the UK. I mean, they've been there for quite some time. For people, for example, in Australia, where Muslims are still rather newcomers, or in the US or many other places. So I think it's good to take some lessons from what you've been able to bring, and something of a success story as opposed to other examples that we brought up. And inshallah, it'll be something beneficial for us to adapt, and so that we will have positive integration and not forceful assimilation. So I thank you immensely for joining us on the program. Sir Iqbal Sacraine. It's been a pleasure hosting you. Jazakallah khairah, may Allah reward you immensely.
Amen.
And thank you, the audience, for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed the time as much as we did. And inshallah, we'll see you again on our other programs. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Spread the word, oh man. Spread the word of Islam. Oh, fortunate one. Paradise must be won. Paradise must be won. Each day and each night. Through darkness and through light. Cry it out to the world. Spread the word. Spread the word. Spread the word, oh man.
Most countries of the world ban bullying. They fight it in their schools and universities.